What if everything you thought you knew about the Brown family, the love, the faith, the togetherness was a carefully constructed lie, crumbling under the weight of one hidden letter? The truth behind the implosion of this notorious plural family is about to be laid bare, quicker than anyone could have anticipated. In a courtroom showdown that will leave no stone unturned, betrayal, guilt, and astonishing discoveries are forcing Cody to finally face the wreckage he escaped. But it's Janelle's reaction to what's revealed that will truly stun everyone. Order in the court. The judge's voice sliced through the tense stillness, reverberating off the polished oak walls. A packed courtroom, reporters, distant relatives, a handful of curious onlookers hushed as one. This wasn't just any ordinary court case. It wasn't about money or crime or contracts. This was about the unraveling of a family that once proudly proclaimed to thrive on love, faith, and togetherness. This was about the Browns, Cody Brown, the man who was once the charismatic patriarch of his reality TV family, was slumped in a chair at the defendant's table. Surrounded by stacks of paperwork and years of shattered trust, he looked older, grayer than his television persona, thinner and eerily quiet. Across the room sat Janelle, an aura of serene, quiet resolve around her, yet her eyes, despite their calmness, betrayed years of pent-up rage. Her daughter stood protectively beside her, guarded and poised. Robyn Brown, Cody's final wife, was a few rows behind her attorney, clutching a tissue in one hand and a water bottle in the other. Her eyes darted frantically between Cody and the judge, as if she knew some terrible revelation was on the horizon. Then, it happened. The moment no one saw coming. Your Honor, Janelle's attorney rose. He reached into a thin brown folder, extracted a single folded piece of paper, and held it aloft for everyone to see. We ask the court to admit this letter as evidence. The judge raised an eyebrow, adjusting her glasses. What's its significance to this case? The lawyer's reply was cool and measured. It's a handwritten letter signed by Robyn Brown and addressed to Mr. Cody Brown. We've authenticated it. This letter was never revealed to any of the co-wives, including my client, Janelle Brown. What it contains is, frankly, appalling. We believe it was instrumental in the disintegration of the Brown family unit. A collective gasp of shock rippled through the courtroom. Robyn went rigid. Cody's face drained of color, his jaw clenching involuntarily. Janelle didn't even blink. Deep down, she had always known this letter would confirm her long-held suspicions. The judge hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Proceed. The lawyer unfolded the letter slowly, almost reverently, as if fearing it might disintegrate in his hands. The paper was yellowed around the edges, the ink slightly faded, clear signs of its age. But the handwriting was unmistakable, looping, elegant, cursive. Robyn's. He swallowed hard, then began to read. Dear Cody, I don't know how much longer I can pretend that everything's fine. I know you notice it, too, the way the others stare at me suspiciously, resentfully, sometimes with pure hatred. I did try to love them, I swear I did. But I've accepted that I don't belong to them. I belong to you, and perhaps that's the actual issue. I'm sick of giving up our peace for their comfort. I'm sick of seeking permission to be near you. I don't want to be the villain of their tale, but if that's what I've become, perhaps it's time to cease apologizing. The judge shifted uncomfortably. The audience held its breath, a collective gasp echoing softly. Robyn buried her face in her hands. The letter continued. You've said to me again and again that I'm your safe haven, that I'm the person you're comfortable around. So why wouldn't we be trying to keep together something that clearly no longer works? If it's me or them, please choose peace, please choose me. Even if that means releasing everything else. A chilling silence descended upon the room. Even the court clerk, normally aloof, looked up, wide-eyed. Janelle's attorney gently set the letter down and looked directly at the judge. Let the record reflect, he stated, that this letter was written approximately 18 months prior to when my client formally separated from Mr. Brown. This predates Garrison's passing. It predates the rupture of all that was left of family ties, and it specifically delineates Robyn's desire to separate herself and Mr. Brown from the rest of the family. Come hell or high water, Cody finally moved. Never meant to be discovered, he blurted out. Torn between silence and confession, the judge looked at him sternly. Mr. Brown, you will answer when requested. But it was too late. The courtroom had heard, and his outburst only confirmed more. He had hidden the letter. Robyn was visibly shaking now. Her lawyer gently rested a hand on her arm, murmuring something inaudible. Janelle sank into her seat, her face expressionless, but her daughter, Madison, was not so controlled. She glared at Robyn, her eyes blazing. You manipulated us all, she whispered, barely audible. The judge rapped her knuckles on the desk. Does the plaintiff wish to say anything regarding this letter? Janelle finally rose. She didn't need to consult notes. Her tone was even, distinct. Proof of what I always knew, she told the court. Cody never wavered. He made his decision. He just didn't have the guts to say it aloud. She turned to Robyn, and Robyn, you wanted more than love, you wanted to be the last wife left. Robyn's lower lip trembled, her eyes welled up, but she remained silent. You might have told us. Janelle continued, her voice heavy with unspoken pain. We were your sisters, you might have been truthful with us. Instead, you sent secret letters and stood by, watching us shatter while you achieved what you desired. The judge held up a hand. That's all for now, Miss Brown. You'll have your complete statement in session 3. Janelle nodded and sat down. The courtroom was quiet, the oppressive atmosphere of betrayal hanging thick in the air. No one stirred. The letter had revealed not only a deeply kept secret, but the fundamental truth that had always overshadowed the Brown family. It wasn't religion or culture or even reality TV that destroyed them. It was favoritism, secrets, and the covert decisions made in the dark, locked in envelopes, stored in drawers. Now, the darkness had been dragged into the light, and everything would never be the same again. The courtroom remained eerily silent, even after the letter had been read during session 1. The emotional blow still hung in the air like smoke in a closed room. People didn't know whether to cry, gasp, or simply avert their eyes from the unfolding tragedy, yet they couldn't. It was as if no one could tear their gaze away from Robyn Brown. Now at the very center of it all, she looked fragile in her seat, her cheeks red from previous tears, her hands visibly trembling in her lap. But now, it was her turn to speak. And everyone knew that whatever she said would either clarify her intentions or deepen her descent into suspicion and blame. Her lawyer stood by her. Your Honor, he began cautiously. Mrs. Robyn Brown would like to provide her statement concerning the letter just read into evidence. With the court's leave, the judge nodded slowly, gesturing with her hand. Go on. Robyn rose slowly, almost hesitantly. She gripped a tissue in one hand and the letter in the other, this time a thought. A copy, but still too potent to ignore. She didn't glance at Janelle. She didn't glance at Cody. She gazed down, as if the very ground could somehow redeem her from the weight of what she was about to say. Her voice was unsteady but distinct. I wrote this letter 2 years ago. I was overwhelmed, exhausted, confused at the time. I was hurt by what I believed was rejection by the other wives. I didn't feel like part of the family anymore, not really. She paused, her lips trembling slightly as she inhaled. That night, I remember Cody had just come home after spending days with the other households. I was sitting alone. I was crying. I felt like I was always in the middle of something I didn't start, but couldn't escape. She glanced toward the judge, who offered a sympathetic but firm look. Continue. So, I wrote, not to manipulate, not to destroy, but to survive. I spilled out all I had been keeping inside. I never meant for anyone else to read it other than Cody. Cody looked up at that point, briefly. But Robyn didn't catch his eye. The words I used were raw, and I know now they were selfish. She held the letter slightly higher, reading from it. Cody, I know they'll never love me the way you do. Her voice broke. That wasn't an insult, that was heartache. I wanted to be loved, I wanted us to be close, but by then, I think we all knew it was too late. She turned the page. I never wanted them to hurt, but I also won't give you up. The courtroom seemed to collectively exhale. The gravity of that single sentence hung heavy in the air. In the other corner of the room, Janelle was frozen like a sculpture, not blinking, not flinching, but under the surface, her silence screamed louder than words ever could. Robyn's hands trembled more now, but she continued. I meant I did not want to lose Cody's presence in my life, but I did not know how much my proximity to him was taking away from everyone else. I did not know that I had become the symbol of everything that was breaking apart. She flipped back to the page she had marked. I can't be the villain in their narrative anymore. If it's me or them, I hope you'll choose peace, even if it means leaving the rest behind. There was a collective gasp. This was it. The very moment every wife and child had replayed in their minds, without even knowing the words were there. This was the silent fork in the road where Cody had made his decision in silence, Robyn or the family, and now they had the undeniable evidence. Robyn slowly lowered the letter. I know what it sounds like an ultimatum, like manipulation. But I swear to you all, it wasn't intended that way. I was shattered. I was hurting. I thought that if Cody remained split, he'd be destroyed. I thought I was assisting. The courtroom did not stir. Even the air seemed frozen. Across the aisle, Cody had lowered his head. Whether in shame or defense, no one could tell. Robyn looked at Janelle for the first time. Her voice softened. I never sought to replace anyone. I never requested to be his favorite. That wasn't supposed to happen. I thought one could share love in a plural family. But I see now that Cody gave me more time, more affection, more loyalty. And before I realized it, it was too late. Janelle remained silent. She just blinked. And that blink uttered, I already knew. Robyn breathed in deeply. To the children, To Janelle's kids, I understand that I became someone you couldn't trust. I know you held me responsible and perhaps I deserve some of that, perhaps I deserve all of it. But please try to understand, I didn't do this to win. I was merely trying not to lose everything, the judge interrupted softly. Mrs. Brown, please finish. Robyn nodded. I apologize, the letter hurt so much. I apologize I didn't say anything sooner. I apologize I let silence speak for me. And I'm sorry for not interrupting Cody when I saw how far he was drifting away from all of you. She sat down, no applause, no tantrums, just a profound silence. It was the kind of silence that came after someone dropped a stone into deep, dark water. And you waited to hear the splash that never came. The judge paused and looked to Janelle. Does the plaintiff wish to address now or in the next session? Janelle's lawyer spoke quietly in her ear. She nodded. Next session, Your Honor. The judge nodded marginally. Court is adjourned for recess. We'll resume in 1 hour for session 3. The gavel struck, chairs moved, papers shuffled. People stood, but Robyn didn't move. She stared at the letter on the table in front of her as if it might start bleeding. Cody stood but remained still, seemingly unable to meet the eyes of either woman. And Janelle, she turned and walked out. Head held high, her daughters followed. They didn't need to hear anymore because deep within, they already knew. Robyn's words may have been spoken in anguish, yet anguish cannot obliterate intent. The letter was perhaps penned in ink, but its effect was etched in heartbreak. The judge hadn't even finished calling the room to order when Janelle rose. She didn't wait for her lawyer, she didn't wait for approval, she didn't need it. Her heels clicked, echoing as she moved forward, her expression inscrutable, her posture rigid, but her eyes smoldered with something raw, anger, grief, resilience, and years of deceit that had finally made it to the surface. She addressed not the judge, but Cody himself. Her voice, when she spoke, was too quiet, and that made it all the more frightening. I asked you for the truth, Cody. The whole courtroom leaned in, hanging on her every word. I pleaded with you to give me a genuine reason why you left us. Not the excuses, not the religion, not the conflicting schedules. I wanted the truth. I deserved it. We all did. Cody blinked. He didn't say anything. He didn't even raise his eyes. But Janelle continued, holding the now infamous letter in her hand like it was a dagger forged from broken hearts. But this is why. She shook the letter in the air once, for everyone to see. This piece of paper, these words, that is what I requested as the truth, and you hid it away in a drawer. You chose to hold your tongue rather than tell the truth, to be faithful to one woman rather than just to your whole family. The courtroom was completely silent. Even the cameras outside must have felt the gravity through the walls. Janelle spun, her tone cutting but never rising in pitch. She was staring at Robyn now. You didn't destroy the family, Robyn. Cody did. There was a sudden gasp somewhere in the gallery, but your silence, your quiet smiles, your failure to stop him when you could see what was going on. You enabled him to do it, whether you meant to or not. You let everything come apart at the seams. Robyn clasped her hand over her mouth and started weeping, her shoulders shaking. But Janelle didn't budge. Do you have any idea what it feels like to see your children cry on Christmas because their father didn't even call? Do you have any idea how many birthdays went by where I had to lie and tell them you were busy, rather than tell them the truth, that you had moved on? That we weren't a part of your world anymore? Her voice broke for the first time, but only slightly. I defended your reputation, Cody. I defended it for years because I hoped perhaps, just perhaps, you'd wake up and see sense. That the man who cradled our babies in his arms was still inside you somewhere. She breathed deeply, the kind of breath you take when your soul is exhausted with survival. But now, I realize what actually went on. She gazed down at the letter in her hand and read out loud, just a snippet. If it's me or them, I hope you'll choose peace, even if it means letting go of everything else. She looked up once more, directly at him. And you did. Cody shut his eyes, still not saying anything, still not reacting. He seemed like a man ensnared by a trap of his own construction. Janelle went on. I might have been able to handle the truth. What I couldn't handle was your cowardice. You didn't end the family like a man. You let it die on the vine, slowly, agonizingly. One phone call gone unanswered at a time. Tears ran down her face now, but she didn't brush them away. She wasn't hiding anymore. Do you recall Garrison's final message to you? Do you know what it was? Cody's mouth opened a little, but he said nothing. Janelle unfolded a creased phone screenshot, laminated as evidence. She read from it. Dad, we miss you, but you only show up when it's convenient. I won't beg anymore. I just want peace for Mom and the rest of us. The courtroom went cold. A visible wave of sadness passed through the onlookers. Even the judge looked moved. She looked down at her notes, swallowing. Janelle held her gaze for a long moment, then turned at last to the bench. Your Honor, I'm not battling over money. I'm not here to ruin a person's reputation. I'm here because my children were abandoned. Their truth was suppressed, and meanwhile, their father got to play house with his favorite wife and informed the world we were merely angry and turbulent. She pointed toward the rear of the courtroom where two of her grown sons sat silently. Tears streamed down one of their faces. These boys grew up thinking they weren't enough. That maybe they did something wrong because their dad chose absence and their mother refused to badmouth him. She turned back to Cody one last time. But today, I'm done protecting you. Her voice grew even quieter but heavier. You don't get to rewrite history anymore. You don't get to say we left you, you left us. And Robyn, I hope someday you realize what that silence cost, not just me, not just our kids, but you too. Robyn was now sitting silently, crying into her lawyer's shirt. Cody still hadn't spoken, still hadn't looked up. Janelle took a step back, nodded to the judge, and sat. The air was still taut with tension. But it was no longer volatile, it was melancholic, final. The truth had been uttered, not shrieked, not hurled, but uttered with the kind of lucidity that can only be achieved by years of suppression. The judge's throat cleared delicately before she finally uttered, "Thank you, Miss Brown. We will move to the next testimony." After a brief recess, the gavel fell softly, and for the very first time in the whole proceeding, Janelle smiled barely, not because she had won anything, but because she had finally said it all. A prolonged silence settled after Janelle took her seat, longer than any silence the courtroom had witnessed thus far. No one stirred. No one coughed. Even the air itself seemed to refuse to occupy the space between what had been said and what had yet to be heard. And then, finally, Cody Brown rose. For the first time in these proceedings, he appeared visibly shaken, not angry, not defensive, but utterly drained. He approached alone, without notes, without excuses. He stood there like a man who had been repressing far too much for far too long, and then he spoke. "I failed." The word hit like a stone. He glanced at the judge, then with deliberate slowness, over to Janelle, and then, after a pause, toward Robyn. "I failed as a husband, as a father, as a man." There was a soft gasp from the gallery. Even Robyn, still weeping quietly, looked up, but Cody wasn't seeking sympathy, he was simply falling apart. "When we began this family, I believed there was something greater. I believed that we could do it another way. I believed in the plural marriage dream. I believed that we could do it with love, faith, and mutual sacrifice." He hesitated, fighting for the right words, but along the way, I forgot why we were a family. I began to see conflict instead of communication. I began to seek peace not in the family, but outside of it. He addressed the judge now. "I was exhausted. There was a fire in every house. There was a wife who required something I no longer knew how to provide. I began to recoil from it all. And Robyn," his voice shattered, "Robyn gave me peace. I held on to it like a lifeline. There it was, the truth, spoken out loud, no pretenses, no lies." He looked straight at Janelle now, eyes bloodshot. "I didn't mean to leave you or the kids behind. I just lost track of how to make anything right, and instead of trying harder, I just left. I thought if I shut up long enough, the problems would magically disappear. That the yelling would cease, that maybe someone else would make everything okay." He breathed slowly and took a step back. "I let the letter just sit in a drawer for nearly 2 years. I read it once, and I knew if anyone else read it, it would all be finished. That one letter said everything that I was too big of a coward to say." He turned to Robyn. "And you didn't make me do anything. But you were the only person I didn't feel judged by anymore. I felt like I was enough in your house. I'm sorry that made you a target. But I see now that it made the others feel abandoned. Because they were." He ran his hands over his face, clearly cracking. His voice was smaller now, more vulnerable. "I told myself I was choosing peace. But what I was actually doing was fleeing. I fled from the difficult talks, from my obligations, from the fact that I had pulled our family so thin, it ultimately broke." Janelle sat in silence, her expression inscrutable, but tears accumulated in her eyes. Cody looked at the ground, then raised his head again. "Garrison's deaths." His voice cut off entirely. He swallowed hard. "Garrison's death shattered something inside of me. I've not been able to mend. I wasn't there when he was calling out for help. He reached for me and I didn't reach back. I can't make that okay. I'll never forgive myself for it." He glanced at Janelle once more, tears now falling. "You were right, he did give up, and I encouraged him to lose hope. Not by what I said, but by everything I didn't." The courtroom was completely still. Even the judge had shifted forward slightly, palms together in front of her. Cody faced back to the center. "I quit going to Christmas because I couldn't handle the disappointment. I quit calling because I was sick of feeling like I was losing. But I get it now. What I really lost was your trust, your respect, your love." He waved vaguely towards the missing space beside him. "I thought I could love you all as much that I could expand my heart into 4 houses. But along the way, I gave more and more to Robyn, not because she demanded it, But because I let that happen, Robyn covered her mouth once again, shivering. And the worst of it, he continued, voice cracking once again, I knew that you all sensed it. I saw it and still I didn't stop. He finally met the judge's gaze. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know my kids might never want to talk to me again. I accept that. But I want to be honest here, even if it's too late, because keeping it a secret didn't keep anyone safe. It ruined everything. Cody hung his head. No one said a word for a very long time. No lawyers rose. No gavel fell. Even the court reporters ceased typing because this was no longer testimony. This was a man bleeding truth into a room that had waited years to hear it. At last, the judge ended the silence with a gentle voice. Mr. Brown, do you have anything else to say? Cody looked up, eyes raw, voice almost gone. Just this. If you're building a family and it feels like you're constantly choosing who to disappoint, stop. Tell the truth before it rots you from the inside. I didn't, and this is the price. He sat down, utterly undone. The courtroom was silent. But this time it wasn't only from shock, it was from recognition. Recognition that sometimes the villain isn't the loudest, sometimes he's the quietest. The one who fades away when the difficult words must be spoken. And now at last, Cody Brown had spoken them, too late for healing. But perhaps just in time for the truth, the courtroom grew quiet once more. But this time not because of shock, it was the silence of something undeniably coming to an end. After 5 long sessions filled with sobs, accusations, confessions, and profound silence, the gavel was raised one final time, and this time, everyone knew that when it fell, so too would the last brick of a family that had crumbled in slow motion for years. The judge, her voice steady but not cold, began to read the ruling. With regard to property and community assets, the court declares there is adequate evidence that all remaining assets, financial, real estate, and otherwise will be divided equally between the wives, Janelle Brown, Christine Brown, Mary Brown, and Robyn Brown. The 4 women each brought years of unpaid work, emotional labor, and caretaking into the common household. The court acknowledges their equal entitlement to spousal contributions. There was no response, not even a gesture of acknowledgement. This was to be expected. It was equitable, but equitable does not necessarily translate into justice, the judge went on. Where minor dependents are concerned, Mrs. Robyn Brown will have sole legal and physical custody of her children with Mr. Brown. Visitation rights for Mr. Brown shall be supervised, subject to completion of emotional therapy, parental counseling, and additional court assessments. Robyn's eyes drifted shut, a tear tracked down her cheek. Cody did not flinch, he had expected this. And then there was the judgment that stung more than others. With regard to adult children common to Mr. Brown and Miss Janelle Brown, the court grants autonomy of said children. Any visitation, communication, or relationship shall be at their discretion only. Mr. Brown shall under no circumstances attempt any contact with them without express written permission. That was all. Janelle did not blink, but her pain was evident in the tightening of her throat, the tensing of her shoulders, containing a torrent of emotion. Cody dropped his head. The words were done. The judge rapped once with her gavel. The sound was final and crisp. Court is adjourned. The courtroom slowly came to life. Everyone moving as if emerging from a funeral rather than a court proceeding. Journalists outside started yelling questions as soon as the doors opened. Robyn, what do you think about the ruling? Janelle, do you blame Cody for your son's death? Mr. Brown, are you going to fight for custody? But the responses were already etched in their faces. Robyn was the first to leave. Accompanied by her lawyer and a court officer, she did not pause for the cameras. Her head was bent low, her pace brisk, her eyes swollen and red, speaking volumes of having nothing left to say. For years, she had been called the favorite, the homewrecker, the one Cody never left. Now, she was the sole wife standing. And still she appeared more alone than ever before. One journalist yelled, Robyn, do you feel guilty? She winced but didn't pause. Her SUV stopped at the curb. She got in quietly, and that was it. No statement, no comment, only tears. Next came Janelle. She didn't hurry, she strode slowly, unapologetically, her head held high, her adult children at her side like silent sentinels of survival. The press mobbed her, but she hesitated just long enough for one brief response. One female reporter asked softly, Miss Brown, what's your message to your family after today's decision? Janelle met the camera's gaze. No wrath, no forced smile, only truth. He didn't break us. He just showed us who he really was, and then she turned and walked away strong, unsullied, but intact. She had lived through betrayal, abandonment, public examination, and loss. And now, for the first time in years, she was free. Cody didn't depart with them. He sat for a long time after the courtroom had cleared. The letter rested in his hands. rumpled and pale, where his fingers had closed around it during his testimony. He looked at it as though it could talk, as though it might say something different this time. But it didn't. It still said, "If it's me or them, I hope you'll choose peace," and he had. But the peace he believed he found came at a price no man could pay. Eventually, the bailiff came up to him. "Mr. Brown, the courtroom is closed." Cody blinked, nodded slowly. He stood and stepped out of the same door that he'd come in through so many years before, when he was still for wives' husband, many children's father, and the image of a family that appeared to be impenetrable, but without anyone following. No family on the sidewalk, only a handful of photographers, taking a picture of a man who'd lost all of it and never even knew he'd done it. Until he'd lost it all. He descended the marble steps a slow foot at a time. Outside, the world continued spinning. Reporters left, witnesses wandered off, the courthouse cleared. He stood at the foot of the steps, still clutching the letter. Once it had been confidential. Now it was public record, and suddenly, all that he'd kept hidden was out there. Cody had once founded his legacy on principles: plural marriage, spiritual unity, trust in the big family paradigm. Now, his legacy was a document in a courthouse, signed and sealed. He wasn't the head of a family anymore. He was a name on custody documents, a name in the background of supervised visitation agreements, and worst of all, he wasn't dad anymore. Because the kids he used to tuck in at night now carried with them memories of distance and disappointment, because the wives he once referred to as soulmates now strolled in separate directions. Because the world he worked so diligently to keep intact by controlling, denying, and fleeing had cracked wide open and left him to catch up. He sat on the courthouse steps, which were cold beneath him, never knowing how long he'd been sitting there. The letter stayed in his palm, still not read again, as if reading it once more would unravel what had occurred, but he did not. Because even he was aware some things cannot be unraveled. And some doors, after being shut, never open a second time. Within the courtroom, the seats were vacant, the air had become stagnant, and Cody Brown, once mobbed by wives, kids, and cameras, was just a man now, by himself, letter in hand. His past behind him, and no one left waiting for him to come home.